This dictation from Progressive Exercise 13. Ready? Start. Mr. Vice Chairman, I rise not only to oppose the bill that has been brought before this House today, but to express the hollowness of the objects and regions which the Minister had just placed before the House. I come to the point and I will have to give a little background because this is the first legislation of its kind in this country which was brought forward in 1969. Former Prime Minister, while dissolving the Lok Sabha in December 1970 and calling for mid-term elections, addressed the nation on the radio, and one of the achievements she claimed was that the government had set up the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Commission to control concentration of economic power, which had got concentrated in a few hands, and to go forward on the road to democratic socialism. After its enactment, this act has already been amended a number of times. In November 1980, this was the first amendment when they said that export production should be excluded from the purview of the total production taken because that does not affect the consumer as it goes out of the country. Para. In April 1982, there was an amendment which gave powers to the government to exempt by notification industries which, in the opinion of the government, are of high national priority or where the government feels that there is scope for export or if the industry is to be put in a free trade zone. That was in April 1982. That amendment by itself had signaled the dilution of the MRTP Act. In fact, the honeymoon with socialism had come to an end, and after 1980, the government had already started on this new path of liberalization and privatization, and there was a new vocabulary which is very much in fashion these days. In 1983, the government again amended the act purportedly based on the recommendations of the Sachar Committee. I will show you within the course of my speech how the government has ignored the major recommendations of the Sachar Committee and accepted only those amendments which have suited this new role of liberation. At the outset, let me tell you that this bill before the House is the last nail in the coffin of the MRTP Act 1969. Para. Sir, it would have been much more honest to bring a simple legislation saying that this House hereby repeals the MRTP Act 1969. That would have been a much more honest way of doing that we are today being asked to do. The minimum I accept from the minister is that an economic legislation or such far reaching consequences should be referred to a select committee in this house and in the Lok Sabha also. From the time of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, There has been a very healthy practice that every complicated piece of legislation is referred to a select committee. In recent times, the government has given a total go by to the system para. Last year, both the houses of parliament passed the direct taxes bill without even understanding the clauses, and the government and parliament were embraced later because that cannot be implemented and it has to be amended again. Therefore, my humble submission to the Honorable Minister through you, sir, is to refer, even at this stage, the bill to a select committee in which there can be experts. There are eminent people on the treasury benches who have got a lot to say on this, and I would be most happy to have their views, but under the present system, they are unable to oppose the bill and the bill will go through. Para. First, we must understand what this legislation is. Unlike the Companies Act or the Income Tax Act, which are acts to regulate business, this act was an act meant to restrict a few business houses so that the others could be free. Therefore, today if you lift the restrictions on these business houses, it is not liberalization, but it is restriction to the vast majority of small entrepreneurs. The phraseology itself is wrong, and the impression created is as if they are loosening. We are allowing these powerful people to have a hold on the small entrepreneurs. That is what we are doing under this act. So, the term liberalization indicates as if the government is reducing its power. No, what we are doing is that a whole bunch of small and medium entrepreneurs will now be again open to the competition from these large houses, which the earlier government, in its wisdom, wanted to restrict through this act. So, first we must understand what we are doing. Liberalization, a restriction act, is likely asking for boiling ice. It is a contradictory term. You cannot liberalize the MRTP Act, the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act can only be tightened or repealed. Liberalizing that act means negating it. Stop.